This is EcoTricity's EcoTEC Roundup Show from Aptera's only carbon zero certified renewable electricity company. We only source from wind, hydro and solar, and we are the leading supplier of electricity to EVs in Aptera. Switch today at ecotricity.co.nz. Welcome back to another roundup of news in the world of clean cars and green energy. Thanks for joining me. We start today with a brief correction from last week's show that many of you wanted us to note concerning the former CEO of Toyota. We reported in last week's show that he was leaving the company, which was in fact incorrect. While he is still being replaced as CEO, he will continue to hold a far less powerful position as chair of the board at Toyota. So we're sorry for the inaccurate reporting. In the last decade, there's been an incredible rise in the average range of new electric cars coming to market. At one point, ranges of 100 miles, 160 kilometres were considered the norm, but now we're seeing 2 to 3 times that offered by most companies, with luxury brands like Tesla and Lucid offering 4 times or more of that figure. This week, Hyundai's all-new IONIQ 6 SE rear-wheel drive leapfrogged into the lead for mid-priced vehicles with an EPA rating of 361 miles, 580 kilometres per charge of its 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack. That model, with 18-inch wheels, is the longest-legged IONIQ 6 by far, with other variants offering less range per charge. We had hoped to go to the launch event, but unfortunately all the spaces were nabbed before we had a chance to register. Following on from Tesla's quarterly and year-end earnings last week, Ford has just published its fourth quarter and year-end financials. While Ford had a bad year for ICE vehicles, it sold 61,575 EVs in 2022, split between 15,617 Ford F-150 Lightnings, 6,500 Ford E-Transits, and 39,458 Ford Mustang Mach-Es. Ford closed the fourth quarter beating Wall Street revenue predictions at $41.8 billion, but was 9 cents per share short on earnings at 51 cents per share. Part of this, Ford admitted, was caused by, quote, execution issues, end quote, in its transition to EVs. Even though its fourth quarter turned a profit, its year-end financials saw it record a $2 billion net loss. Rivian has announced that it will be laying off 6% of its staff in an attempt to save money and restructure its operations ahead of what many are expecting to be a global recession. In an email to staff, company CEO RJ Scaringe said the company must focus on production ramp-up and profitability, apologising to those who were being laid off. Last year, Rivian missed its own production goals by a significant margin, and while vehicles are now being made at the highest rate in the company's history, it, like Tesla, Ford and others, all of whom have already laid off staff, is struggling to balance increased supply chain prices while simultaneously not getting dragged into a recently started EV price war. The layoffs are not connected with its production facility, where a second shift will start soon. Aptera, who we've covered quite a bit in recent weeks, is still in the process of trying to raise its final $50 million needed to bring its solar electric three-wheeler to market. This week, it announced a new way it hopes to raise that capital by gamifying investment into the company. In a YouTube video and blog post released this week, Aptera co-founders Steve Fambro and Chris Anthony told fans that anyone who invests money will compete against other customers to have their vehicles made first, essentially giving wealthy investors a chance to leapfrog the queue. The company said the investor who puts the most money down can secure the first production Aptera off the line, with production slots behind them ranked according to how much money investors and customers have put down. It's not unusual for startups to do this. Tesla did something similar for its first cars, but frankly it stinks. General Motors has officially begun production of the Hummer SUV, the second Hummer-badged EV to roll off its production line at Factory Zero. The very first example of the production line has already been auctioned off for charity at Barrett-Jackson's auction house in Scottsdale, Arizona. The charity in question, Tread Lightly, is a US charity that, quote, promotes outdoor ethics and a sense of stewardship in nature, end quote. We're told by GM that the funds will go towards trail restoration projects and educational programs. But let's be honest, the irony is that the Hummer EV does not tread lightly anywhere. And while the Hummer EV is now in production, GM has admitted this week that its 212 kilowatt-hour battery packs are headaches to source cells for. Frankly, there's enough cells there for more than 3 Chevrolet Bolt EVs to be made for every Hummer SUV. As we reported on the show last month, Tesla has recently dropped the prices of its vehicles, resulting in a massive increase in demand for its cars around the world. At the time, many in the industry predicted this price cut would be followed by Tesla's rivals, and this week, Ford made that official, dropping pricing for the Ford Mustang Mach-E in the US, while committing to a sizable increase in vehicle production volumes. While the entry-level Mustang Mach-E Select rear-wheel drive only gets a $900 price cut, the Mustang Mach-E GT Extended Range gets a more impressive $5,900 price cut. Sadly, though, these price cuts, while now in effect in the US, won't be repeated in every other market, with Ford's European arm confirming that it won't drop Mustang Mach-E prices yet. Given that parts shortages are easing, expect this price war to continue for some time. Ford may be going after Tesla with its own price cuts for the Mustang Mach-E, but Volkswagen has committed this week to not do the same. Talking to German-language news outlets this week, Volkswagen's recently appointed CEO, Oliver Blume, has stated that Volkswagen Group has a, quote, clear pricing strategy, end quote, and trusts in, quote, the strength of our products and brands, end quote. Just like General Motors, which also said recently it would not be cutting the pricing of its vehicles anytime soon, Volkswagen says it wants to focus on profitability rather than price. While Volkswagen trails behind Ford in the EV sales chart in the US, it is far more dominant in Europe, with around 330,000 ID models delivered around the world last year. With more EV factories than Ford has, Volkswagen feels safe. It doesn't take a genius to know that most automakers have increased the range of their electric vehicles in the past decade by adding larger batteries to them. There are exceptions. Tesla has, for the most part, focused on efficiency and power electronics, and the Hyundai IONIQ 6, not to mention some of Mercedes-Benz vehicles, have such impressive ranges due to low coefficients of drag. But now a new study commissioned by the Climate and Community Project reinforces what I hope is blinking obvious. Building more, smaller, more efficient EVs with smaller and efficient drivetrains and battery packs could dramatically cut lithium demand in the US by as much as 42%. If society pushed for more public transit and reduced car ownership, that lithium demand could be lowered by as much as 66% compared to today, which would dramatically reduce the environmental impact of mining those raw materials. As more and more car companies switch their portfolios to include more electric vehicles, we're starting to see commitments made that will only see them edge towards EVs. This week, Volvo became the latest to tread along that path, with a news report that says the company is looking to turn all of its core models into EVs by 2026. According to Reuters, the next generation S60 and S90 sedans and the XC60 SUV will join the XC40 and XC90 in going all-electric. The difference, however, is that unlike the XC40, which is offered as an electric variant and an internal combustion engine variant, it's suggested that Volvo will build electric-only versions of these other models in a similar vein to the EX90 that just launched. Volvo had previously stated that it wants to be all-electric by 2030, so this news report isn't so far out of left field. It is, however, a good 4 years ahead of those previous promises. Before we get to the last two stories, I have a quick question. Are you in the market for a new electric car? Because if you are, then you live in Aptera. You should totally check out our very own buyer's guide at ecotricity.co.nz. It is packed with all the information you need to pick a car that's right for you and includes plenty of details about incentives you can get, charging providers you can use, and of course, how to get charging for your EV at home. So follow the link below and make sure you start your journey today. As electric vehicles have become more and more common on our roads, we've seen a dramatic acceleration in terms of vehicle battery breakthroughs. Some new types of battery chemistry, like solid electrolyte lithium metal batteries, have impressive energy and power density and can recharge quickly too, but are often too fragile for use in EVs. Now, researchers at Stanford University, working alongside the US Department of Energy's SLAC, National Accelerator Laboratory, have identified exactly what causes lithium metal solid-state batteries to fail: mechanical stress. In a new paper published in Nature Energy this week, the researchers explain that even modest bending, twisting, or indentation of lithium metal batteries can cause microscopic fissures that lead to short circuits. They believe tempering the raw materials during manufacturing, like you might when you make things out of metal, could solve the issue. And finally, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I love the idea of travelling around the world, specifically in an EV, and I've seriously given it plenty of thought. But as I've also previously explained, there are some reasons why it wouldn't be safe for me to make such a trip. That doesn't, however, mean I can't live vicariously through others, and this week, the channel's good friends, Chris and Julie Ramsay, unveiled the all-electric modified Nissan Ariya Steed for their latest adventure, a pole-to-pole electric vehicle expedition. In the planning for more than a year now, they're going to take 10 months to travel from the magnetic North Pole to the South Pole in an EV, covering all kinds of amazing landscapes on the way. As a former sponsor of their first adventure to Mongolia, and someone who has regularly been beaten on the virtual racetrack by Chris, I cannot wait to see this adventure unfold. They start their journey in March, so keep your peepers peeled. And on that note, we are done for the day. Before I go though, please do make sure you've hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest in EV news from this channel. And of course, if you haven't already switched, it is time that you switch to Aotearoa's only carbon zero certified renewable electricity company. It is super easy to make that switch, and in doing so, you will help wean Aotearoa off dirty energy and onto clean green power that will keep the land beautiful for generations to come. I will be back with more awesome content very soon, as will the lovely Gavin Kiwi EV Shoebridge, so make sure that you are really subscribed, and I will be back this time next weekend for our usual roundup show. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Nikki Gordon Bloomfield. Ka kite! See you next time.